Hi again. In a prior segment, based on the chapter Some Recent Publications in Edmond Gruss's book Apostles of Denial, written in the 1960s, he's discussing the significance of the Divine Purpose book, which had been recently published when Gruss wrote these things upon leaving the Watchtower before he became a Baptist minister later. He wrote this as his basic thesis, and it's been republished quite a bit since the Apostles of Denial book. And in this particular section, he's dealing with some of the rewritings of history that the Divine Purpose book gets up to. He's reached point number 6 here. The important matter of Russell being recognized as that faithful and wise servant of Matthew 24, verses 45 to 47, is played down in the Divine Purpose book, and the account seems to place the error not on Russell's own claims, but the mistake of his followers, because Russell had supposedly repudiated that position. As has already been shown from the literature of the convention trips, Russell's being the faithful and wise servant was a test of fellowship. In the preface of the Finished Mystery, Pastor Russell's position is clearly stated as, quote, the messenger to the Laodicean church, to give the household of faith meat in due season. On the very next page, one reads, quote, that wise and faithful servant of the Lord, Charles Taze Russell, in capital letters. This is all from pages 68 and 69 in the Finished Mystery. Page 4 and 5 in the Finished Mystery. In the book's commentary on Revelation 3:14, the claim is related, quote, the special messenger to the last age of the church was Charles Taze Russell, born February 16, 1852. He has privately admitted his belief that he was chosen for his great work from before his birth. That from page 53 of the Finished Mystery. Of this book, that is the Finished Mystery, the book Jehovah's Witnesses and the Divine Purpose states, this 7th volume, therefore, contained largely the thinking and comments of Pastor Russell during his lifetime. That is from the Divine Purpose book, page 70. Then he has a 7th point about the Divine Purpose book rewriting their modern history. He says Rutherford is said to have worked, quote, to root out any remnants of creature worship that might be left in the organization. That's page 69 of the Divine Purpose book. This sounds commendable, but the fact is that Rutherford tried to do away with the popularity of Russell in order to take the place he occupied in the hearts and minds of the people. At first he adopted and propagated Russell's doctrines almost unchanged, but after a short time he repudiated and changed them in many places. That Rutherford rooted out all creature worship but his own is clearly seen. Davidson, that is Bill Davidson, in a article, Jehovah's Traveling Salesman, this is in Colliers magazine, 1946, Bill Davidson writes, quote, everything was done in the name of Judge Rutherford. The tracts were all his personal messages, the Watchtower became filled with his personal opinions, and the newly acquired radio stations, WBBR, spent 90% of its broadcasting time propelling his booming voice into the metropolitan New York ether. Another indication of Rutherford's one-man control is found in the study by Stroup. Now this is the Jehovah's Witnesses, a book published in 1945, a booklet I think it was, I've never had a copy of it. Jehovah's Witnesses, 1945, published by Columbia University Press, page 24. Herbert, Hewitt, Stroup. Stroup says, if a witness voiced an opinion at variance with that of the central organization, he was Satan-inspired. Well, nothing's changed there, and was subsequently cut off from the fellowship of true believers. This procedure applied even to duly elected chairmen of local groups. More and more, the leadership gravitated into the hands of one person, Mr. Rutherford, so that by the time of his death, the entire organization, including the board of directors, was controlled by this one man. End of quote. After Rutherford was almost forced off the air, phonographs and records appeared to perpetuate his voice and message. Then in 1931, when Rutherford changed the name to Jehovah's Witnesses, it almost completely cut the movement off from the past. Here's point number 8. Another typical rewriting of the facts is found in the following statement concerning the year 1925. The view had been somewhat general among the anointed that the remaining members of the body of Christ would be changed to heavenly glory that year. And that's a quote from Jehovah's Witnesses in the Divine Purpose, page 107. This statement implies that the error was on behalf of the anointed and didn't have any encouragement or foundation. The fact is that Rutherford himself had seeded and nurtured this hope for years previous to 1925, two concrete examples being the book The Harp of God and the booklet Millions Now Living Will Never Die. The prediction was that Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob were to return to earth in 1925, and the new order of things under their earthly rulership would take place in that year. Rutherford wrote with assurance, quote, "Therefore we may confidently expect that 1925 will mark the return of Abraham, Isaac, Jacob, and the faithful prophets of old." That's from Millions Now Living Will Never Die, pages 89 and 90. An extended quotation from the same source by Rutherford clearly shows what was to be expected. This is from page 12 of that booklet, but it's really more the length of a short book. Quote, "When does this world end? If we can definitely fix this period, then it is an easy matter to determine when the divine promises with reference to life everlasting will be open to the world in general. We therefore propose to prove in this argument that the social order of things, the second world, legally ended in 1914. That's a reference, by the way, to Barber's concept of the three worlds. The second world ended in 1914. And since that time has been and is passing away, that the new order of things is coming in to take its place, that within a definite period of time the old order will be completely eradicated and the new order in full sway, and that these things shall take place within the time of the present generation, and that therefore there are millions of people now living on earth who will see them take place, to whom everlasting life will be offered, and who, if they accept it upon the terms offered and obey those terms, will never die." Gruss says, notice that Rutherford says, within a definite period of time, the old order will be completely eradicated and the new order in full sway. This he predicted for 1925. Schnell, that's William Schnell in 30 Years a Watchtower Slave, writes that in the convention of that year in Germany, Rutherford gathered the German Bethel family around him and said, "Boys, you don't want to go to heaven now when there is so much work to be done on earth. It seems the Lord wants us to do the work that we thought the princes would do." That's from the converted Jehovah's Witness Expositor, 1958. Schnell continues, "He talked for 3 hours to us that night, and when he got through, he had talked us out of going to heaven." There was nothing new in this type of thing, for Russell did the same thing concerning 1914. A.H. Macmillan, who had been in the movement some time, writes of the 1914 period, quote, "I believed it myself sincerely that the church was going home in October." Russell began hedging in the early part of 1914 in the Watchtower and wrote, "If later it should be demonstrated that the church is not glorified by October 1914, we shall try to feel content with whatever the Lord's will may be." That from H. Macmillan, Faith on the March, page 47. Then on the same page he prepared for the fall of his prophecy. If in the Lord's providence the time should come 25 years later, then that would be our will. Next time, Russell's separation from his wife and several other issues that are rewritten in the Divine Purpose book. I'll put in a link to what Joan Setnar says on 1925. She mentions the 1925 amnesia. Her family came into the organization around that time. So this is about her family involvement before she became a Bethelite in the 1950s. And especially she notes the fact that she was allowed to keep her birthday during those years of her youth before going to Bethel. Joan Setner on 1925 Amnesia. I'll put that link on your screen. Plus the basic library for JW's playlist, of which that series by the Setnars is part. See you soon.